Welcome to the Rewatch Ryan YouTube channel. My name is Ryan Snelling, and I want to talk to you about John Campea and Robert Meyer Burnett some more. Now, before you groan and accuse me of milking this topic for my own personal gain, I actually want to discuss some of the comments that I've been getting in my previous two videos. There's a lot of good discussion in there. Even the people that don't agree with me, for the most part, have been respectful and have offered up other ideas and considerations. Few people have been gross and annoying, but it's been good for the most part, and I appreciate all of the community coming together to discuss this topic. People are passionate about it, and that's all I really have to say about that. So the people that are kind of questioning the whole point of this, I don't feel like I have to explain YouTubing to you, and the fact that there is a community out there that appreciates the videos. I'm glad. I'm trying to come across objective. Of course, I'm a fan of Robert Meyer Burnett, but I also watched the John Campea show for 2 years, and I wouldn't have done that if I didn't like the show. I just have criticisms. My most recent comment, and I got a lot of this, guys. I got a lot of it. A lot of comments feel the need to remind me that it is the John Campea show, and he can do what he wants with it. And guess what? You're right. John can do what he wants with his own show, but he can't do it without criticism and comment from his fan base. And that's all this is. I'm not misguided in thinking that my videos are going to magically bring Rob back, because that's not what I expect to happen, and that's not what I want to happen. I want Rob to continue doing what he's doing. I'm simply commenting, showing my support, appreciation. I'm voicing my disappointment with somebody who I think lacks awareness and doesn't do everything in the best interest of his fan base, even though he likes to throw that out there. So it's not like I've ever talked about this John Campea show being bad necessarily. A lot of people like to take my words, and a lot of people who don't know who I am think my entire channel is built to take down John Campea. It's just not the case, and I've tried to be diplomatic and thoughtful in my videos, and I think that's mostly come across. So I'm not going to spend that much more time on the people that just haven't gotten it, because this video is obviously for the people that appreciate it, and that's been the majority. So I appreciate everybody who's been thoughtful and considerate and subscribed, and it's just been really cool to see. So I appreciate it. Again, I do these videos for two main reasons. One, I'm really good at them. And that's because of my background. I've been covering this space forever. I'm going to talk about that in a part 2 to this video. So part 2 is going to be about how I got involved in this space, podcasting for Schmoes and Collider. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I've referenced this in the other 2 videos. I hosted After Schmo, the Schmoville podcast, Collider Afterthoughts, all on the Schmoes and Collider podcast networks. There was a time when I was thriving on those podcast networks, but no more. But if you go to YouTube and search Schmoville podcast, After Schmo, Collider Afterthoughts, I'm right there. You can find me doing what I'm doing right here, right now, but several years ago. So part 2 is going to be about how I got involved in the space. I'm going to warn you, I'm going to cherry pick a lot of what I say in that video, only because I have no problem talking about the stuff that is primarily public anyway. I mean, the fact that I hosted those podcasts, the fact that bad things happen, a lot of it was voiced on air, so I have no problem going through some of that. I will be choosy about what I say, because ultimately I don't have any sort of agenda or goal when it comes to what I do and don't say, because I don't expect anything to happen because I post these videos. And I don't want anything to happen, because I don't want to spend a ton of time reliving my experience, because it was very negative. I don't have any hope or desire that because I make videos and talk about my experiences that it'll either alleviate or add fuel to the fire when it comes to my relationships with these people, because I've just reconciled that I don't want or need to talk to any of them again. And I actually have no confidence that the people that I didn't get along with or treated me poorly have thought twice about how they treated me. So I just don't care, and I'll move on. But to give you the context as to why I care about this here and now, it's because I relate to Rob in a certain way. I mean, I related to a lot of pundits in this space for varying reasons. But the thing I liked about Rob, he was an outsider looking in, and so was I. Rob talks about this, but if you've been following along with his history streaming with Snap and Campea, he was asked, and so actually, let's go even further back. Schnepp was asked by John Campea, and they didn't really know each other at the time, if I remember correctly. Somebody referred Schnepp to Campea because he knew a lot about the Guardians of the Galaxy, and that was obviously a movie that was coming out in 2014. So he invited Schnepp on, and I think the rest is history. Schnepp eventually became the host of Collider Heroes. He didn't have any YouTube content of his own, if I remember correctly. He had never hosted anything. I remember a story about him being super nervous the first episode he hosted for Collider Heroes, and the rest is history. And he was a beloved figure, and maybe one of the most, if not the most beloved figure in this entire space. And Robert Meyer Burnett is synonymous to Schnepp because they were close friends, but he was also an outsider. I don't want to say no awareness, but he didn't have much awareness of the YouTube space. He didn't have relationships with any of the pundits at the time, and Schnepp just asked them to come in and talk about what he loves. And so that was all new to him. And at one point in my life, that was new to me too. And I had wide eyes meeting all of these people and getting to know these people. It was weird. For me, though, I had watched them on YouTube. He hadn't. But I always found that maybe because we were outsiders all along, that maybe that's why we didn't completely connect with everybody else. I mean, in my experience, hosting after shows where I was obsessing over the finest details of what happened on the Schmoes Know Live show or Collider Movie Talk or Collider Live, and criticizing a lot of those pundits listened to me criticize them, and that had to be extremely weird. I didn't consider this until after I was out of the space. It must have been really weird because a lot of their mentality, it was a hustle and grind mentality. It was a dog eat dog. It was very LA, and I didn't have any concept or awareness of that. So it must have been real threatening to them to have all of these outsiders just come in. All of a sudden, this guy is hosting a show that gets played more than mine, and he's in Kentucky doing it in his bedroom with his best friend with a mic, and he has better equipment than I do. It must have been weird for him. So I get it. So the fact that Rob, like me, is an outsider, he probably just wanted to talk about, simply put, the things that he loved to talk about, and he didn't want to get caught up and all of this bullshit, the dramatics and the politics that have always occupied this space. I think he probably just looks at it like, what the hell? Like, I'm just here to talk about hot toys. There's all this other stuff that goes on. I mean, there were different categories of pundits back in the day, and Rob fit into this outsiders industry people. I think, of course, he's with Schnepp because of course, but also like a Scott Mantz, like somebody who's just so beloved and just wants to talk about the things that they love, and they don't really play the hustle that like a Roxy Stryer would play or a Jay Washington would play. They never really fit that mold, and they never came across as disingenuous or like trying to climb a ladder or anything like that. There was always a vibe to Rob that he was just there and to have fun. I mean, and you could tell that. I remember watching Collider Heroes. I remember how excited I would get. The second Schnepp would, and this is how we did it, he'd go, over here, we got Robert Meyer Burnett. Every time he said that and Robert Meyer Burnett just rolled off the tongue, I got excited because I knew I was in for a fire episode and I would learn so much about comics, and he reinvigorated my love for things, and he would introduce me to things that I had never heard of before in a way that John Campea can't. Robert Meyer Burnett can pull a foreign film from 50 years ago out of his ass and teach me something about it. And John Campea can't. First of all, he can't even remember half the celebrities that are in the movies that he loves to begin with. But it's just a completely different feel. There was the Clark Wolf tweet incident. I don't know if you guys remember this, but they got into like a little Twitter beef on accident. He kind of accidentally stumbled upon it because she got offended by something that he said, and he didn't mean for her to get offended by it, and it was just like this weird thing. And then there was the whole like Twitter thing with RB3 that got Robert Meyer Burnett canceled and blacklisted from the Schmoedown. I remember when that happened, Jay and I used to obsess over how people must interact in the Collider offices, because half the time it seemed like they didn't even know each other, even we saw them on shows together every single day. And also, Schmoes Know was so built upon this idea that they were a friends group, but the Collider people didn't really operate like that, so we just used to have fun like making up scenarios that they must go through every single day. But I remember when Rob got canceled because of RB3. And RB3 was a young guy at the time. He was in college. And I remember just thinking, what does Robert Meyer Burnett think about getting in this space and being canceled by this college student? The weird thing about it, though, is that at the time, Rob was like involved in the Schmodown as long as he had been involved in the Schmodown. And RB3 was too. And I remember asking Jay, like, don't these people know each other personally? It's such a weird idea that RB3 like called for this public execution of Robert Meyer Burnett when don't they know each other? Like, couldn't RB3 have either settled it personally or just like known where Rob was coming from? I wouldn't, if my best friend Jay tweeted something that I don't know, I questioned or whatever, it would just be solved amongst ourselves, or I would just have a better idea of where he was coming from because I knew him. So I remember asking Jay, like, why did this happen this way? For no reason at all. This guy got canceled for something and he made an apology video and explained how he felt, but he still couldn't participate. Not that the Schmodown is the end all be all of anything, but I just remember thinking, what a weird thing to happen to that guy because of whatever. I just can't imagine Robert Meyer Burnett thinking that he'd always find himself in all this, I don't know, bullshit. But again, I didn't either, and I relate to it immensely. So that's why this one sucks, is because I've seen John Campea do this kind of shit without any sort of awareness whatsoever. The fact that he's just now figuring out that he's doing Collider 3.0 when I could have told you that 2 years ago. The fact that in a way he kind of became the thing that he resented in the first place, is he became the corporate man who didn't appreciate talent, and so that person has left so he can hide behind the, oh, Rob's doing great and I'm going to support him and he should build his own channel, but he's also full of shit. I think that's why I care so much, is that the guy that I just so happen to find the most interesting and one of the best aspects of this space, I find ways to relate to him. So it sucks when I feel like all he ever did was crush and work hard for the John Campea show. It's a job that he loved and appreciated, and you can tell that he's bummed about it. You can tell at the end of the day, and there are people in the comment section that get it. Here's something that we were a big fan of, and we think for maybe superficial, maybe for childish reasons, it gets taken away from us. And YouTube personalities, I'm sorry, it's different. Following YouTube personalities, following people online is different than, say, any other relationship that we have with any other celebrity. We have relationships with John Campea. We have relationships with Robert Meyer Burnett in a way that we don't have relationships with Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio. So what do you mean, why do I care? Someone I watched every single day isn't on the show anymore? Of course I care. Why wouldn't I? The same way that you care if a studio mistreats a franchise or if a director mistreats an actor. You know, if we like something, we don't want to be disappointed by it. We want it to work, and it's not always going to work, but we still get to ask questions. But in terms of the money thing, I think it's interesting how split the comment section is in terms of if John Campea does or doesn't have money. He's either super rich and greedy and doesn't know what to do with it, or he's flat out broke and the channel's going to crash in a year. I'm not really that concerned about John Campea's personal spending. A lot of you all are into that. I'm not, only because I really just care about what's in front of me, which is the stuff that applies to the show that I have the most knowledge of. And as far as I can tell, is pretty well off and does well for herself. So anything that they buy together as a couple, I'm not interested in that. But also, if I was in the position John was in, where I was making a lot of money from a YouTube channel I built, I would want to spend it on the things that I would want to spend it on too. So it's not like John can't spend his money on things. I'm not that concerned with it. In fact, the main reason why I'm not concerned with it is because, again, doubling down, I don't think he doesn't have money to pay Robert Meyer Burnett. So that's the whole point. That's why I'm not obsessed with his Teslas, because I know he has money. And at any point, he could talk about whether he does or doesn't have Mint Mobile as a sponsor anymore. But he's literally made every other excuse instead of that. So anyway, so that is just a brief generalization as to why my videos exist. I'm going to make a part 2 to this video that goes over sort of my history and my commentary in the Schmoes Know and Collider space. And so you'll know a little bit more about me and what I'm about. But until then, that's all I got. I do movie stuff on here too. I'm not trying to be a full-time movie reviewer or anything like that. So the people that are like, you're a nobody, you're trying to grow this channel. Hey, I'm not trying to do what you think I'm trying to do. Whether it's about the John Campea controversy or whether it's about being a full-time movie reviewer, you have no idea what my life is. So just hang out with me. Follow me on Letterboxd. You can see what I watch. Letterboxd.com/rewatchryan. You can also check me out on Instagram or Twitter. I'm most active on Instagram. So Instagram.com/rewatchryan. And I will see you on the next video I do. I will see you on the next podcast I do. Bye-bye.